So I was going to oil this door, but it's Spooktober. I think I'll do that next month. Alright, here's a viewer question that has come up a few times in one form or another. Are double-edged swords dangerous to the user? Can you actually cut yourself with the other edge? So the idea here is, with a single-edged blade, it's pretty straightforward. Dangerous side toward the opponent, right? So nothing is threatening me here. With a double-edged blade, you have two dangerous sides. So there's one sharp edge facing you. So the question is, could this come back and knock yourself in the face? Or could you, with certain techniques, cut yourself? And so the short answer is, if you know what you're doing, no. But here's the long answer. So there are certain techniques and positions where the edge comes close to you. In fact, with some guards, you might even rest the edge on your shoulder. It's not necessary. You can absolutely lift it up and hold it here instead. But this just preserves energy, which is a good thing in a fight, of course. But you can't really hurt yourself this way unless you do something really ridiculous. The idea is I could kind of slice my shoulder here, right? In theory. So for one, it's actually pretty difficult to slice through clothing with just this sort of motion. If I was naked and I'd do this, then yeah, I would cut myself with a sharp blade like this. But with the clothing here, if I just move it forward like that, it's not really going to happen. But the other thing is, this is poor technique anyway. I should lift the blade off and then cut. And it can look like that because if you want to cut in a way that doesn't lead with your hands, meaning you don't want to cut like this because then the opponent can target the hands. So you want to keep the hands retracted to make them unavailable as a target and then lead with the blade. So it can look like you're kind of doing this, but I can still do the same thing and keep the hands retracted and lead with the blade without any slicing action there. I've seen a few comments from people on cutting videos where they are concerned that I might hit myself in the head because it looks like the blade gets really close to my head. And that's really more of a camera angle kind of thing. In order to hit myself with this particular cut here, the thwart cut, to hit myself in the head, I would have to mess it up catastrophically. This type of cut uses flat plane rotation. So instead of cutting like this, I rotate the grip in my hand and I cut along this line here. So if I wanted to deliberately perform a thwart cut in a way where I would scalp myself, I would have to bring this really close to myself, and then I could possibly hit myself if I catastrophically mess it up. But the way you practice it, that's really not what's happening, because there are a few positions from which you would throw this kind of cut. One is either in a forward guard, a plow guard, long point, anything like that, or fool's guard. So something like this. So from here, you would raise it up and you would kind of throw it outward like this. So there. It's not actually anywhere close to my head if I do it this way. It just comes here, I just rotate it past my head, if anything, and also in front of my head. So this is not going to happen. If I cut from, let's say, left ox to right ox, depending on the camera, it may look close because this kind of is whizzing over my head. But again, if you look at it from different angles, it's really not close to my head. So I can easily do this all day, and I'm not at all worried about my head here. There's also certain muscle memory involved. If you've practiced with swords long enough, you have a feel for them. So if I close my eyes I'm not at all worried about hitting myself in the head because I feel where the sword is. So even if I make it close, I have an idea of how it travels. So I know this is getting sort of close to my head, but it's not hitting me. If I close my head and I get deliberately close to my head, I can feel this. This is too close. I don't like this, right? So it's really not an issue. So what about an actual fight with a resisting opponent? Could the opponent force your own blade against you? Now, they can try to push against it Hollywood style, but this is a very common thing in historical swordsmanship. If you feel a lot of pressure coming your way, you release and let them, redirect them in another way and cut or do whatever you want, really. So let's assume for the sake of argument that somebody's trying deliberately to force my blade against myself, just kind of pushing against it with brute force. So for one, it's not a lightsaber. So even if it touches me, it's not gonna automatically cut me. It would require a certain amount of force, it would require some rotation, or a slicing action with a lot of pressure at the same time. So, but let's assume somebody is trying this. So what prevents me from just rotating it, forcing the flat against my body? There's one situation where this could kind of come into play, but it's a problem for a different reason. So let's say you have a very light sword, like this Hansian here. It's like 700 something grams. It's super light. So if I try to statically block an opponent's sword cut, an opponent who's delivering a strong cut with a heavier blade, and I try to just parry it like this, and it blows through because it just doesn't have the mass to stop it, then it could potentially force this against me and whip my own edge into my face. But at this point, I have a different problem because guess what? My opponent's blade is also coming toward me. So if this gets displaced and the blade ends up against my body, the opponent's probably going to cut me in the face. So I've already failed at that point. It doesn't really matter. Even if this was a single edge, if this was forced into my face and I get cut at the same time, it's not a good time. But here's again where experience comes into play. If you practice the concept from the old German fighting manuscripts called fühlen or feeling, you will not just stand there statically and try to hold it and just not do anything. You would, as soon as you feel that your blade is collapsing, if you feel there's too much pressure, you would redirect it. So instead of just trying to hold it, as soon as you feel that, I mean, you would most likely do that anyway because you realize that you have a much lighter blade. So the idea would be to step aside and allow this to rotate into a hanging guard where the opponent's blade actually slides off yours. So you're redirecting it instead of stopping it. So you don't have to just stand there and be like, oh crap. Even if this is a last second kind of thing, you can always just, move the hand up so the blade goes over your shoulder instead of in your face. And don't get me wrong, this is not meant to trivialize sword safety in any way. You can hit yourself, and people have done it. I have seen cases of somebody during tatami cutting splitting their own kneecap because they cut toward their lead leg. Or let's say you throw a very parallel, overcommitted krumpau toward your lead leg. Yeah, again, you could potentially cut yourself, but that's actually with the true edge. So on a single-handed sword, if I did a krumpau, guess what? I can still cut myself. If I overcommit and cut myself in the leg, I'm going to cut myself with the main edge. So yeah, if you don't know what you're doing, a sword can absolutely be dangerous to yourself, but it's mostly the true edge. And finally, here's a case where you can legitimately, seriously injure yourself with the back of your own weapon. And that is in case of an axe, warhammer, etc. Something that has a spike on the other side. Or it could also be a double-bitted axe, for example. So if you have something here and you wind up for a strike and you do it way too vigorously, yeah, you can absolutely put the spike in your back. Or what I've also seen where somebody starts in a retracted position like that and then they they basically scrape their back or their shoulder open or cut it open by doing this. Now, again, there's a problem with technique. If you're this retracted, that's already a bit of a problem. You're not really supposed to be here. Most guards from the historical manuals don't go all the way back here, or only in certain situations. Quite often it's here, or it's here, or it's here. It's not usually up against your back. But even then, even if you're doing this, this can still be easily avoided. If I don't lead with my hand, but lead with my weapon, this is what it looks like. So there's absolutely no danger here. The danger is if I lift it up first and then cut. It's just not what you want to do. So there you have it. Using a double-edged sword isn't actually as double-edged as you may think, as long as you do it properly. So hope that answered the question. Thanks for watching and have a good one, folks.